So that is one way in which God manifested, or a way in which God revealed himself to the Israelites. When also you look at the call of Moses in the early times, the call of Moses, God appeared to Moses in form of a burning bush. So if you have ever seen a burning bush, you're able to understand what I mean with a burning bush. So can you imagine God coming to you through a burning bush? Most of you would run away because they would feel like this is not a real God. Others would feel maybe it's an Illuminati from somewhere else. So you can see God is has a lot of strength, and that is why we call him. He is a God who can manifest himself in various ways. Also look at a creation account, the first and second creation account, whereby God created the sky, God created the moon, which are now in the sky. God separated the waters from the dry land. He created animals. He also created human beings, which was now Adam and Eve. He removed a rib from Adam and then created a woman for Adam because he felt Adam was so lonely. So in that way now you're able to understand the nature of God and see God is a loving God, or is a God who is all-powerful, and all those qualities you can mention about God. So you can see when we understand about God, God has been there from the beginning and he will be there until the end of time. So although we get to learn the nature of God as we continue in the next lessons. So another reason, number 2, why we learn about the reason why we study CRE in school is to enable us to acquire knowledge and attitudes that will enable a Christian make appropriate decisions in life. For example, there are times you find you are tempted in one way or another. Maybe you have peer groups that are influencing you, maybe to take alcohol, or maybe to do things that you don't want to do, or maybe you've never done, but you know those things are bad. So you can see because you have that knowledge on CRE, you're able to make appropriate decisions that will enable your life to become better. The third reason why we study CRE in school is to be able to appreciate our own religion and also that of others. So like you see, our religion here in this context is Christian religious education. We also have other people who believe in other religion. For example, there is Islamic, who study Islamic religious education. We also have the Hindus. So also by learning CRE, though we worship one God, by learning CRE, you're able to respect each other's religion and also to understand the nature of CRE and why you are supposed to read CRE in school. So meaning you're able to understand your culture and other people's culture also. And by understanding this culture of other people, you're also able to live in harmony with the rest of the people in the community. The fourth reason why we study CRE is to enable you to acquire principles of Christian living. What do we mean by principles of Christian living? Principles means something that you do. You can say it is something that no matter what, whatever temptation comes, you are able to follow what you have planned. For example, when you look in the 10 Commandments, they give us the teaching of how human beings are supposed to relate with one another and the relationship between human being and God. So we learn that from those 10 Commandments. It is summarized in the New Testament that Jesus summarized that one should be able to love for God and also the love for neighbor. Meaning as a disciple, because being as a Christian, you're expected to live as a disciple. Meaning you have to show love, you have to show compassion for others. For example, when you look at the book of John, chapter 13, verse 34, it says that, "And now I give you a new commandment, love one another." Meaning as a Christian, you're supposed to love others and you're supposed to love yourself. And for you to be able to love others, you must first of all feel the love for yourself. Love yourself first so that you are able to express that love to other people. So the fifth reason why we also study CRE is to enable us to develop a sense of self-worth and also identity for ourselves and for others. Meaning by understanding our basic principles of Christian living, we are able also to appreciate others' life. And that is also in relation to how people live with one another in our community. For example, you find sometimes there are those who wake up in the morning, they don't even say hi to your neighbor. That is not a good show. Sometimes you're supposed to be social, because from being social is where you develop the love for one another. Also, Christian religious education helps us to promote international consciousness. For example, when you look at the book of Genesis, I repeat again, God created the whole universe. And everything that is in the universe, everything that you see here, the trees, human beings, animals, goats, cows, all those were all created by God. Meaning, for God to create everything He created, He saw that it was good, and He also appreciated it. So, by meaning now, all these people that live in the world, in Kenya, also in other African countries, and also in other continents, all those people are created by God. And not just created, but they were fearfully and also wonderfully made by God. Meaning, the whole human race is one. It is one. So meaning we are supposed to treat one another like a brother and sister. Meaning all efforts are supposed to be made so that everybody lives in love, peace, and harmony. That is why you find, by mentioning about international consciousness, you find maybe conferences. For example, the All African Conference, churches, maybe the churches come together, they join together with one mission or with several objectives. Also, we can have maybe, for example, the African Union. When you research, you're also going to see what all these unions does. Also, for example, the World Council of Churches, which brings all churches together, no matter what the name of the church. So all churches are brought together, and so that, and you can see, for example, in the World Council churches, their aim is to spread Christianity all over the world. So another reason why you study CRE is to help us to live a new Christian and a new life in Christ. What do you mean by a new life in Christ? So many a times we go to churches or to several churches, and we hear people standing up and saying they are saved again, I'm born again. So meaning through CRE we are able to learn and also acquire some values and attitudes that transforms our lives. Meaning we are influenced positively by the Christian religious education. And then afterwards we are able to have a positive impact to the society as a whole. And that means now we are able to change our lives from maybe the bad life to a good life, which now we are also able to fight for a seat in heaven. So the next reason why we study CRE is to help form a bridge for further studies. Maybe for, you can say CRE is a career subject. For example, when you look at the pastors, many of the pastors we see in our churches, or maybe the bishops, the priests, they are there because they studied CRE. And they studied CRE in details, which is now known as theology and also some philosophy. So by studying CRE, then you are able to perform, or maybe to get foundation for further studies and further your career. So meaning spiritually, by the spiritual and the social values that are acquired in the subject will help you to perform your daily duties. And that means now you take CRE, or you take that as a career or a life career. So another reason why we study CRE is to identify answers to some life questions. Many a time I've been asked by students, why do we say that God created the universe? Then who created God? Then by like I said in the beginning, that God was there from the beginning and He will be there until the end of time. So whoever, then by studying CRE, you're able to understand the nature of God, that God was there from the beginning and will also continue being there until the end of time. So such mysterious things in life, then we are able to understand them by just learning CRE. So the last reason why we study CRE is because CRE contributes to the achievement of the national goals of education. And I started by saying that CRE is a subject that has been incorporated in the 844 curriculum, meaning it is a requirement that students are supposed to study CRE as a subject. By also studying that CRE, we are able now to get the national unity. That is why sometimes you find when you look at, for example, in case of a bomb blast, or maybe when you look at, we can say, in case of a tragedy happens, all Kenyans join together, or maybe people from other different communities or countries, they come up together to help the affected. So you can see that brings upon national unity. Also, you are able also to, when you study CRE, you are also able to get the social equality. Meaning that is why we identify ourselves as Christians, because we have one name that is referring to different people, but under one umbrella, which are now the Christians. And also we are also able to respect and develop our cultural heritage. And this is mostly found, for example, when you find people singing. You find people singing with their Maasai attire, others singing with, what do we call them? The hats that traditional men used to wear. And also the skin, the hides. So that means now, at the same time, they are promoting their cultural heritage, and they are also promoting Christianity in a way. So meaning now we all live as good citizens in one country. So it's unfortunate, viewers, it has come to the end of our lesson. So, but I hope you have learned a lot, like what CRE is, and also the reasons for studying CRE. So in the next lesson, we are going to look at the Bible and see what the Bible is and who also wrote the Bible. So don't forget to tune in at the same time next week. See you then.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Thank you for joining and for choosing School Pacific Television. I am with you for our English lesson, and we are going to look at oral literature, specifically on narratives. I am your teacher, Sylvia Nyaga. Narratives. Many people will ask, what is a narrative? A narrative is a story that tells about people, places, events, or a natural phenomena. A narrative, it is classified into different groups. We have got myths, we have got legends, we have got tricksters, we have ogre stories, and many more. A myth is a narrative that deals with the creation and the origin of people and the natural phenomena at large. That's what we call a myth. For example, we have got like the Gikuyu community. They have a myth about their origin. They do tell how the Gikuyu people came about. They believe that there was Gikuyu who was male and there was Mombi female, who in this case was Gikuyu's wife. Gikuyu and Mombi, they were living at Mount Kirinyaga, in which they believed that God, of whom they called Monyenyaga, lived in Mount Kirinyaga. Gikuyu and Mombi had 9 children who were daughters. And Ngai dropped men from heaven who got married to these 9 daughters of Gikuyu, and they procreated. And they became many people. And they believe that's how the Gikuyu people came to be. That is a myth telling about the origin of the Gikuyu society. Another category of narratives, we have got the etiological narratives. What are etiological narratives? These are narratives that attempt to explain the origin of a certain physical trait. For example, we have an etiology telling about the origin of death. It's believed that God lives in heaven and the people live on earth. So people did things that didn't please God, and God became angry with them. And so God sent the chameleon to go and tell the people on earth that he was angry with them and they should change their ways. But since chameleon is so slow, he went playing on the road, and regarding his slow movements, he took too long to reach earth and give the message to the people. And so God decided to send the dove with a message to the people and tell them that they were going to die. And the dove went straight to earth, and he told the people the message of God. And since it was already there, that's how death came into being. That is an example of an etiological narrative. It explains the origin of a certain physical trait that is in existence. In this case, it's death. Number 3, we have legend narrative. Legend narratives, these are narratives that talks about memorable historical events and people. We have got many legends. For example, we have Luande Magere of the Luo community. He was a legend of whom he was a very strong man. Whenever he went to war, he was always succeeding. He would never be killed. And it explains that the strength of Luande Magere was existing in his shadow. You see, the story about Luande Magere of the Luo community, he was a legend of the Luo community. And legends, they do explain about historical events or people. We have got ogre or monster stories. These are some of the interesting narratives we've got. They explain about a fantastic ogre or something that was bringing trouble onto people. Mostly these ogre stories, they are created out of fantasy, imagination and creativity. You try to imagine there was a big ogre, it used to eat people, it used to kill people. You see, the ogre stories, they take the people out of the real world. They take the people into the world of fantasy. We'll try imagining about this ogre or this monster. Apart from the ogre stories, we also have got trickster stories. Trickster stories, these are narratives that ideally deal with people being tricked in a story. For example, we have got the story of the hare and the hyena. How the hare told hyena that he had honey. And you see now, because of his greed, the hare wanted to trick hyena. And because of his greed, he fell into the trap. The hare told hyena, if you allow me to stitch your back, your behind, the sweetness of the honey will not leave your body. And actually, the hare succeeded in tricking the hyena, and you can imagine what happened to the hyena. He was eating all the honey, but it couldn't leave his body. Biologically, it was too bad, and eventually the hyena had to burst and die. And we find that the hare was laughing while the hyena was going through this agony. That's what we call the trickster stories. We have dilemma stories. These are stories that show a character, an individual character or a group of people fall into. There are two or many decisions to make, and this character here is caught up between the two. Of the two, what do I choose? For example, and you find the two of the decisions there to be made, they are all challenging. They are either good or they are bad. And mostly the dilemma stories, they deal about morals in the society. For example, you find like the story of the hyena. He had been invited into 2 parties. Because of his greed, he wanted to go to the 2 parties. He didn't want to miss any of them. And now you see here, the hyena is in a dilemma. What route do I use? Do I use this? Do I use this? You see, he was in a dilemma. He didn't know what to choose and what not to choose. That's what we call dilemma stories. We have got spirit tales. Spirit tales, they deal with ghosts or spirits who are so prominent in this case. And mostly these spirit tales, they are there to teach about morals in the society, to correct those who are immorally upright in the society. That is what ideally the spirit tales deal with. And we also do have human tales. Human tales, these are narratives that deal with human beings as the main character. Here, we do not have like the personification where animals take the characters of humans, no. In human tales, the human being is used as the main character. And finally, in our categorization of narratives, we have allegory. Allegory, it is a type of a narrative where the characters and the events in the narrative, they represent the real life that is happening. It could either be factual, that is true, and it could either be fictional, something that has been created out of fantasy, out of suggestion. You see, that is what we call allegory. But ideally, allegory deals with the real life situations. Now, we have known what a narrative is. We have gone through the different categories of narratives. And so now, as an oral narrator, how should you perform your oral narrative to your audience? Number one, you should ensure that you've captured the attention of your audience. You should ensure that you do not bore your audience. You see, so there are devices that are used when performing an oral narrative. Number one, we use the opening formula. The opening formula, it's like, for example, it usually has a stock phrase. You find like you say, once upon a time, in the beginning, a long time ago. That is what we call the opening formula. And the functions of an opening formula while performing the narrative, one, it captures the attention of the audience. You see, the audience had gathered, but the narrative hasn't yet begun. So to capture the attention of your audience, you say, once upon a time, and yeah, the audience will now concentrate. That is how we capture the attention of the audience through the opening formula. Number two, the opening formula identifies the narrator. You're having many people around, and you don't know who the narrator is. So while the narrator stands and uses the opening formula, definitely the people around will know that he is the narrator. Number three, the opening formula announces the coming of a narrative. This will give the knowledge to the people that, there's a narrative coming along after you've used the opening formula. Another device we use when performing the narrative, that is when you're giving the narrative to your audience, we do the closing formula. And that is after you've narrated your narrative and now you're at the end of it, you use the closing formula. The closing formula, it gives way to the other narrative that is coming onto stage. It also relaxes the audience by letting the audience know that, now we are coming to the end of the narrative. So ideally they are relaxed, their attention now, they are psychologically said that the narrative is coming to an end. It also gives way to the other. Maybe a song is coming on stage. So when you bring the closing formula, it will let the audience know that something different this time is coming onto stage. There's also another device that we do use, that is facial expression. Facial expression, it brings out the mood in the narrative. For example, maybe you say, the hyena was in pain. You're like, he was in pain. You put that facial expression that will show that really the hyena was in pain. That is the device that you use to make the narrative more lively when you're performing it. We also use tonal variation. Tonal variation, it is the manner in which you pronounce the words in the narrative, and this is used to create rhythm. Rhythm in this case, it makes the narrative more lively, you know. So you should make use of tonal variation as a device when you're performing your narrative. You should also involve your audience. You see, if you just go on stage, you're narrating, you're not involving your audience, eventually they will get bored, they will stop listening, you see, and you'll not be a good storyteller. So in this case, you involve your audience. For example, you could ask them questions. You narrate a bit of it and you ask them questions. Ideally, when you involve them, it will make the narrative more lively and more creative. You also involve your audience by asking them to sing along with you. In the middle of the song, of the narrative, you could include a song and ask the audience to sing along with you. You see, and this will make you involve your audience, and it will make the narrative more lively. You won't bore your audience. Then you use gestures. You know, the gestures express ideas, they express thoughts. For example, you could say, now, the man was thinking, he was in a dilemma, and you're like, You see, use of gestures. He was trying to think, he was trying to put something out, you know. It's very important to use gestures when you're performing a narrative, and to be a good narrator, you should make use of gestures. You also make a dramatic pause. This will make the audience more attentive. You're creating suspense by that pause, and you're like, what is coming next? They are so eager to know. You're in the middle of the story and you say, the ogre captured the girl, and you make a pause. The audience will really be interested to know, so the girl was captured by the ogre. What happened next? You see, when you make use of such devices, you make your narrative more lively and more, you'll be such a good storyteller. So now, when you see, it will make you create suspense, and you will come and capture the attention of your audience. We also make use of onomatopoeia. What is onomatopoeia? These are sounds that imitate the sounds in the story that you're doing. For example, you could say, the bees buzz. Onomatopoeia, imitating sounds in the narrative. That is a very good device when you're narrating a story. You could also say, the dog barked, woo woo. You see, such sounds, they create attention, you will make the audience lively, they'll find themselves laughing, which is a very good device. Now getting to that, we'll take a short break. You could go stretch yourself, relax. Thank you for joining me back. I believe you've had a good break, you've relaxed your mind, and you're ready to take much more about narratives. So before we went for the break, we were discussing about the devices that we use to perform a narrative, to make the narrative lively, and to make a good storyteller. We are going to continue with these devices. The last device we discussed, we said it was onomatopoeia. These are imitating sounds. Now, another device I want us to look at is ideophones. Ideophones, these are also imitating sounds, but these are sounds that are not found in the dictionary. These are sounds that are not ideally in the English world. For example, you could say, I boarded the train, and it was moving along. The train sounded kukurukakara, kukurukakara. You see, that sound, it is imitating the sound of the train on the rails. But ideally, the kukurukakara is found nowhere in the English dictionary. It's found nowhere in the English world. But it is an imitating voice. That's what we call ideophones. Many students do confuse onomatopoeia to ideophones. The main difference of the two is that ideophones, they are not found in the dictionary, but the onomatopoeia, they are found in the dictionary. But the similarity of the two is that they are both imitating sounds. Another device that we use is the rhetorical questions. When you're performing your narrative, make use of obvious questions. That's what we call rhetorical questions. These are questions that are obvious. You know, when you're asking it as a narrator, you're obvious. Well, yeah, the audience will have an answer, but you're not expecting them to give you back an answer. Rhetorical questions, they will lengthen the story, they will draw the attention of your audience. You see, it is a very good device when you are performing a narrative. An example, you could ask someone, did you expect that hyena would use the two roads? You see, it's a rhetorical question. Ideally, it's a no, because it's one road, he has got 4 legs. 2 can't use this road and 2 use the other. So ideally, he just introduced of the 2 roads, one of them. But you see, the rhetorical question, it draws the attention of your audience, and your audience will start thinking, really? What would you have done? Oh, that is a very good device, one of the best devices actually. There's another device known as a paradox that you use when you're performing narratives. In your narrative, you include a paradox. I know some of you back at your minds, you're asking yourself, what is a paradox? A paradox, it is a contradictory statement. A statement that has some truth in it when it is explained into details, but when you look at it lightly, you see like, no, it can't be. For example, you could say, Kenodia saved his money by using it every day. You see, and you're like, Kenodia was using his money every day, but he saved it by using it every day. How could that be? You see, it's a contradicting statement. How could you save money by using it every day? Most people, by spending money, most people believe you're not saving it. But here, the narrator is telling you that Kenodia was saving his money by spending it every day. It's a very good device because it's contradicting itself as a statement, but ideally, when you explain it into details, it will bring out the truth and the sense in it. So now, we are done with the devices that we use when performing narratives. And to the students who probably may be expecting the examination, either in Form 4, either in Form 3, whatever form that you may be in, you will always expect the questions after every unit that you're taught. So here, from the narratives, how we began, how we introduced what a narrative is, how we categorize the narratives, how we've explained the devices that you could use when you're performing a narrative. You could, for example, expect such a question. Imagine you are a storyteller. You've imagined you're a storyteller. State and explain the devices you would use to make the story lively. As a student, you should be very sharp to understand that you are being told to explain the devices used while performing a narrative. I hope and believe that you could remember and that you would be able to tackle such a question. To get an example of a narrative and maybe the devices that you would use, you could refer to Okumba M 2003, a book entitled Studying Oral Literature. Then, after we've now learned the devices that we use in performing a narrative, we could also go through the styles that are used in the textural narrative techniques. You know, a narrative, yes, it's a narrative. How is it created? What are the techniques? What are the styles used to come up with a narrative? We said a narrative is a story or a tale that explains the events, the place, and the people. It could either be true or it could also be false. So now, how do we come up with this narrative? That's what I'm trying to mean. The styles, the techniques used to make a narrative. Number one, when you're making a narrative, you should come out with a plot. What is a plot? A plot is the section of events in the narrative, how the events are going to occur, how they are going to take place, to ensure that they are having a flow. That's what we call a plot. A plot answers the questions like why, when, how. You see, that's what we call a plot. It brings out the flow of the story and to make it more understandable. For a plot, it also enables answer the question, what happens after what? For example, in the story that I told you about a myth, the origin of the Gikuyu society. Yeah, the narrator told you that there once lived Gikuyu and Mombi. And the audience will start asking, so now there was Gikuyu and Mombi. What happened after? The plot, how you plot your narrative, it will enable answer that question. What happened after Gikuyu and Mombi were there? They are only two. So now what happened to bring about the Gikuyu society as a whole? Another device that we use when creating narratives, we use the songs. In the midst of your narrative, you involve a song. For example, we find a story of the Gikuyu society. There is this man, he was a blacksmith. He left his pregnant wife at home and went to go and try solve some money that could help the family. And when he was there, we find that the pregnant woman, an ogre came and started feeding the woman. He wanted her to deliver so that he could feed on her and the born baby. But apparently, there happened that there was a dove around. The dove observed what was happening. And so, the woman sent the dove to the husband, who was a blacksmith who had gone to work. And we find that when the dove goes there, it started, there were many blacksmiths around. But now, for the dove to communicate to the blacksmith, you see, he sang a song. Moturiogo turai sagararaisa tura vai sagararaisa mokagonya siarire. You see, that song, it was used as a communication between the dove and the blacksmith. The dove communicated to the blacksmith. As the song continues, we find out that the dove communicated to the blacksmith. He explained to the blacksmith that your wife has given birth, yes, but she is in the hands of an ogre who wants to feed on her and the born baby after he has grown. So we see, we use a song. It is used as communication between different parties in the narrative. Another use of a song as a stylistic device of creating a narrative, it is used as it separates episodes in a story. For example, we have this thing we call a story in a story. Now, before you create another story, you could involve a song that is used to separate the two episodes in a story. Again, a song is used to set the mood of the narrative. You see, for example, this dove, the dove that was sent by the blacksmith's wife, we see that this dove, it was like worried. Oh, blacksmith, you're at work, but your wife is at home. She has given birth, but in the hands of an ogre. And it's like, you see, it creates the mood. The mood, you find that it's a sad mood. I'm worried. Your wife has given birth, but she's in the hands of an ogre. You see, the song creates the mood in the narrative. What else does a song do? A song entertains the audience. You see, when you come up with that song, your audience is like, oh, they are listening to the tune of the song, to the message of the song. It entertains your audience. That's what a song does. Again, a song, it emphasizes. You saw, it's repeating, and when you repeat, it is emphasizing. It is emphasizing what is happening. A song. So we can see that a song is a technique of creating a narrative. It has got very many functions. Well, one, we have said that it is used as a communicating device between the characters in the story. Secondly, we have said that it is used to entertain your audience. Number three, we have seen that a song creates emphasis in the story. We have also seen that the song, it sets the mood in the story. And again, we have also said that it separates episode in the story. So we can see that this song, it's a very good stylistic aspect when you're creating our narrative. It really helps our narrative to be a good narrative, a very good narrative. So now, after we have looked at the song, what other device do we look at? We have dialogue. Dialogue is the presentation of a speech in two places, as in two, like two people or two characters in the narrative, they are communicating. What does it do? What does a dialogue do in the narrative? It makes it more dramatic. You see, when you have two people on stage, it's like a dialogue. It's making it more dramatic. It's like they are acting, but ideally they are performing the narrative. So that's what the dialogue does. What does it also do? It personifies the character where human character is not used. For example, we see the dove was communicating to the blacksmith. Ideally, doves do not communicate. So when you say that the dove was communicating to the blacksmith, you're personifying the dove through the dialogue. That's what a dialogue does. Number three, we use proverbs. Proverbs are used as a summary at the end of the narrative. You've done your narrative, you're through with it, and then finally when you're coming to the end, you use a proverb. You see, it's used as a summary. Another device that is used is repetition. Repetition is the repeating of words, repeating of a verse when you're creating the narrative. For example, you mention a phrase in your first paragraph of your narrative, you redo it again in the second paragraph, you're repeating the phrase. And how does this help? It creates emphasis. You're emphasizing what you discussed in the first paragraph, you emphasize it by use of repetition. Again, repetition, it sets the mood. You see, for example, you're talking of a story about victory, maybe people are from war, they have succeeded. And when you're explaining the story, you keep repeating to emphasize that yes, surely these people had won. They have really succeeded in the war. Again, the repetition maintains the rhythm of the narrative. Rhythm. The musicality of the narrative. When you keep repeating, you create that rhythm, the musicality of the narrative. There is also suspense. We use it as a technique when you're making our narratives. You're just there and you create suspense. Oh. The audience, who could be your reader or ideally your listener, in this case will be so interested to know what will happen next. You see, and you use that as an aspect when you're creating your narrative. There is also satire. What is satire? Satire, it is this exaggeration that you make to bring out the effectiveness of the story. For example, you see that the hare brought honey to the hyena, but stupid hyena with his greed, he didn't want the sweetness. Imagine, he was imagining that he wanted the sweetness of the honey to stay in his body. And what did he do? He asked the hare to stitch his behind, so that even after eating the honey, it would not get out of his body. You see, you use satire, you exaggerate, you take your audience into the world of fantasy. They start imagining, oh, so now the behind of the hyena has been stitched. He can't let go the honey that he's eating, and you can start now imagining what will happen to the hyena. That's what the satire does. So that is all we had prepared for today. Thank you very much for joining me. I believe that you've taken home something that will assist you as an oral literature student. Thank you very much. Meet you next time. I was your host, Sylvia Nyaga.
School TV, in collaboration with the Management University of Africa, offers Bachelor of Arts in Development Studies with the School TV, in collaboration with the Management University of Africa, offers Bachelor of Arts in Development Studies with the options of Entrepreneurship Development, Project Management. School TV, in collaboration with the Management University. School TV, in collaboration with the Management University of Africa, offers Bachelor of School TV, in collaboration with the Management University of Africa, offers Bachelor of Arts in Development Studies with the options of entrepreneurship development, project management, economic development, and environmental management. Accredited by the Commission of University Education, the uniqueness of the program classes delivery offered by Management University of Africa. Lectures are done through television on School TV channel 115 on Star Times and other decoders. Tuition is free and one is only required to pay for admission and examination. For more information, call 0722 4193 or 0706 535244 or email admission@mua.ac.ke.
Thank you very much for joining School Pacific Television. I believe you're fine, and I would like us to tackle English. I would like us to do some functional writings today. I am your teacher Sylvia Nyaga. I would like us to look at minute writing. What is minutes? Minute is a summarized recordings of proceedings of a meeting. In this definition, we have very many words. We have records, we have proceedings, we have meeting. Minute, it is a summarized recording of proceedings of a meeting. Why do we write minutes? Minutes provide records for future reference. Minutes provide records for future reference. And how do we write minutes? Format of writing minutes. Number one, we begin with the title. It's good that you put into your mind that every form of writing should always begin with a title. This will enable the reader identify the kind of writing that is being put into consideration. For a minute, we start with the title, and the title has its content. What should be the content of a title? Number one, we should have the name of the people meeting. We should have the time of the meeting. Venue. And the date of the meeting. Those are the contents of the title of a minute. After the title, we have the present. These are the people that have turned up for the meeting. After we've written down the members present, we write those that are absent with apologies. These are the members who have not turned up for the meeting, but one way or another, they sent someone an apology or the informant to say that they would not be turning up for the meeting due to various reasons. Number 4, members absent. These are the members that didn't turn up for the meeting and didn't inform anyone that they would not be turning up for the meeting. We do not write members absent without apology because they are just absent. They haven't informed anyone that about their absentia or the reasons for their absentia. They are just absent. So we don't have to write their members absent without apology. They are members absent. We do not write that they are absent without apology. Now, after we've written our title, the members present, the absent with apology, and the absent, we have the we have the in attendance. Who are the in attendance? These are the people who have attended the meeting, but initially they are not members of the meeting. How do I mean? For example, maybe it is a club in an institution meeting. Let us say, for example, the Red Cross Club. Who are the members of the club? We have the officials that include the chairperson, the secretary, the treasurer, and the rest. And we also have the members. And now when these people plan for a meeting, we have the patron of this club in the school. And they decide that the patron should come to the meeting and listen, know how the club is moving forward. When this patron comes into the meeting, this patron is not a member of the meeting. He or she has just been asked to come and listen. And so in this case, they are called the in attendance. They are present in attendance who are not initially supposed to be part of the meeting. After we've written the in attendance, we write the agenda. Many students write agendas. It's good if you put into your mind that agenda has no plural. It is in the singular form, agenda. We do not have agendas, it's an agenda. In the agenda, we begin with the preliminaries. What is preliminary? This is part of the meeting that the chairperson welcomes the people to the meeting, thanks them for arriving on time, and probably asks one of the members present to open the meeting with maybe a word of prayer. That is the part of the preliminary. After the meeting has been opened with the word of prayer, after the chairperson has welcomed and thanked everyone for attending the meeting, we go to the part of the reading and confirmation of the previous minutes. In this case, the secretary reads the meeting of the previous meeting. After the secretary reads, a member who is present in the meeting and who was present in the previous meeting will confirm whether the minutes are true or they are false. After the reading now, the secretary and the chairperson can sign the minutes after they have been read and confirmed. After the reading and the confirmation, we move on to the matters arising. What do you mean by matters arising? There was a previous meeting. The minutes have been read, they have been confirmed. Are there any matters that have arisen from the meetings that have just been read? Those are what we call the matters arising, and they should be included as part of the agenda of the meeting because they should be put into consideration and they should be tackled. After we've gone to the matters arising, we go to the business of the day. Why did you come to the meeting? What did you come? What did you come to discuss? Business of the day. The business that made you people gather together for a meeting. That is the business of the day. And it is the agenda that brought you people together. After you have discussed the business of the day, we move on to any other business. Commonly known as the AOB. After you've discussed any other business is the business that may arise in the midst of the meeting that hadn't been planned for as the agenda of the day, and it has to be put into consideration. That is what is known as the any other business. After you've discussed any other business, you now come to the part of the adjournment. In the beginning of the meeting, we had the preliminary, where the chairperson thanked the members for attending the meeting and opened the meeting with a word of prayer. Now, just as the meeting began in a formal way, it also ends in a formal way. This is the adjournment part. This is the part where the final comments are made, clarifications are made, anything that is to be discussed is done, and then you schedule a date for the next meeting. A date is scheduled for the next meeting that is to come. After the meeting is winded up, maybe by a member, or maybe by a member called upon by the chairperson, or maybe by the chairperson himself, and then the meeting is closed by a word of prayer, and you schedule a date for the next meeting. That is what we call the adjournment part of the meeting. After the adjournment, we have the signing part. Remember, in our agenda, we had the reading and the confirmation of the previous minutes, after which we said after the minutes have been read and after they have been confirmed, we have the chairperson and the secretary signing. So now, when you're in a meeting and you're taking down the minutes that are preliminary, and what you should know about minutes is that they are written in passive voice. What do you mean by passive voice? The doer of the action is not mentioned. For example, in the preliminary, instead of saying that, for example, Emmanuel opened the meeting with a word of prayer, we say no. We use the passive voice. The chairperson welcomed people into the meeting, and the meeting was opened with a word of prayer by a member. We do not mention names, and we write minutes in the passive voice. I do believe that now, as an English student, you can comfortably write minutes. Having learned of minutes, let's take a short break and meet back to discuss much more after the break. Thank you very much for keeping in touch and for joining me back after the break. Before we went for the break, we were learning about minute writing. We said that minute is the summary or recordings of the proceedings of a meeting. We learned the format of writing a minute. How we said we begin with the title, the members present, members absent with apology, members absent, the in attendance, the agenda that should begin with the preliminary, the reading and confirmation of previous minutes, the matters arising, the business of that day, any other business, adjournment, and the part that we leave blank for signing during the next meeting after the reading and confirmation. And now that we know how to write minutes, it is also good for us to learn and know how to write a report. What is a report? A report is an account given of a particular matter especially after an investigation. An account given of a particular matter, especially after an investigation. We said a report, it's an account of a particular matter. It doesn't necessarily to be after an investigation. Why? Because we have two types of reports. We have a confidential report and we have an investigative report. What is a confidential report? A confidential report is a report that is written about someone. It's written to give a testimony about someone. For example, maybe we have this person who has applied for a job in a certain company, and this company has asked for a report about this person, and this person has been working previously in a different institution, and the company to which he has written an application letter will demand a report from the previous place of work. The kind of report that this previous place of work gives to the current place where this person is looking for a job is called a confidential report. A confidential report, it gives information about someone. And how is a confidential report written? A confidential report is written in the format of an official letter. Previously, we have tackled official letter writing. A confidential report is written in the same format as an official letter, whereby we have the address of the sender, the address of the recipient, the salutation, the rib, the body, and the selling note. So now, I would like us to look at the format of writing a confidential letter, in which we are going to use a question to answer this, to answer it and find a format of writing a confidential letter. Imagine you are the managing director of Tumaini Hypermarket. Write a confidential letter about Emmanuel Nyaga, who has been your employee. Imagine you're the managing director of Tumaini Hypermarket. Write a confidential report of Emmanuel Nyaga, who has been your employee. How do you write this confidential report? We begin with your address. You who is writing, who are you? Who are you? The managing director to Tumaini Hypermarket. Your address. In case the recipient will need to send a reply to you, you write the address so that they may be able to get back to you. You give your address and the date on which you're writing the report. To who are you writing? Maybe this Emmanuel, he's applying for a job at Tuskys Supermarket. you're writing to the managing director, Tuskys Supermarket, Nairobi, Kenya. After you've written both addresses, you salute this person that you're writing to in an official way. You don't know the gender of this person. You don't know whether they are male or female. So, dear sir or madam, and a comma, sorry. After which, you now go to the re. Now in the re, that's now where you show that it is a report that you're writing. Report on Emmanuel Nyaga. You write it in capital letters and you underline. After you have written the both addresses, after you've saluted the person that you are addressing, and after you've written the name, you now go on and write the report. You would say, I am the managing director of Tumaini Hypermarkets, and I have been working with Emmanuel Nyaga in my company, where he has been holding the position of a sales and marketing director. Emmanuel is a trustworthy man who works hard, very hard, to see the company to which he's working for rise to a better level than he found it when he joined it as a place of work. I believe if you get Emmanuel as part of your staff members, he will help the Tuskys Supermarket grow to a higher level, since he is a hard-working man. Thank you. That is just an example of what you may write about Emmanuel. If he was a bad person, well, write it. It's a confidential report. You're giving a report about this person. Who is he? How is he? How does he or she conduct himself? After that, we sign off. Just as an official letter. You write your signing out. Yours sincerely, signature, and your name. For example, we would say John Dege. So that is how we write a confidential report. Now that we know how we write a confidential report, we also write an investigative report. An investigative report, it gives the account of events after an investigation is carried. And what is the format of writing an investigative report? We have the title, for example, how the title should be written, you would say, a report on investigation of theft that occurred in the St. Matthew Boarding Primary School dormitories last week. That is an example of a title of an investigative report. Number 2, it should have the introduction part. What should the introduction include? It should have the aim of the investigation, why are you doing the investigation? investigation. Why are you bothering yourself to consider the investigation? Let us know why you are doing the investigation. Another thing that the introduction should have is who requested the investigation. When was it requested? For the introduction, you'll say, for example, this is a report written and compiled by the chairperson of the Students' Council, St. Matthew Boarding Primary School, to investigate on the death that occurred in the students' dormitory last week. This investigation was requested by the Dean of Students on the 6th of January 2014 and is to be handed over by the 20th of February 2014. After the introduction part, we go to the collection of information. The methodologies used. What are the methods used to collect the information? We would, for example, have used questionnaires. We would, for example, have used interrogation. And many other methods that would have been used to collect the information. You would, for example, say that questionnaires were written having these and these categories and they were given to the students. You would also say that student prefects were interrogated in the staff room. That is the methodology that was used to collect the information about the death that occurred in the students' dormitories. After we have collected the information, we give us the findings. You have carried out the investigation. Theft occurred in the students' dormitories. You wrote questionnaires. You interrogated the students. What are the findings that you got out of all these? For example, you could say that out of the questionnaires, most students say that there was a blackout before the theft occurred. So you would include it in the findings what happened before the theft. In the findings, you can divide it into two parts: findings before the theft and findings after, during and after the occurrence of the theft. For example, you could say before the theft, there was a blackout. Before the theft, most of the students were in class for their preps. And what happened during and after the theft? During the theft, people moved into the dormitory, they stole items. They didn't want to be recognized of their voices or voices. After we've heard the findings, we go to the conclusion. What do you conclude? There was a theft. You have been asked to investigate on the theft. And now that you've already had your findings, what do you conclude after the findings? What is your conclusion? You would, for example, conclude that people who carried out the theft are people who are very well conversant with the school environment and its programs, how it's scheduled, how things occur in the school. That would be your conclusion. After which you write a recommendation. You have known the problem. What do you recommend to help tackle this problem and to prevent it occur another time? That is what we call the recommendation. Most students confuse and write the recommendation before the conclusion because they believe that conclusion is the end of everything. When you are writing an investigative report, the conclusion comes before the recommendation. You first conclude and then you recommend. After you recommend, you now sign who wrote this report. And you end by saying this report has been written and compiled by your signature, your ideal name, for example, Francis Macau, and your designation, chairperson of the Students' Council. And one thing that we should know, in the introduction part, you should also include the people who carried out the investigation, whereby in an investigative report, we have a committee that has the chairperson, the secretary, the treasurer, and all the members that are included in a committee. So that's how we write an investigative report. I do believe that as a good English student, you can now write both a confidential and an investigative report. Thank you. See you next time. I was your host, Sylvia Nyaga.
Audio Jungle.
I'm Teacher Grace. Today I'm going to take you through the biology lesson where we shall go through Form 1, Form 2, Form 3 and Form 4 work. Now the first question is about similarities and difference between animal and plant cells. The plant cells have cellulose cell wall, while animal cells have nucleus. The second point is that the animal cells have cytoplasm, while the plant cells have a vacuole containing cell. Containing the cell sap. The plant cell has the vacuole that enables them to transport the food material within the cell. Number 3, the animal cell have cell membrane, while the plant cell have cell wall. Number 4, the animal cell contain mitochondria. The mitochondria are used for energy synthesis in the animal cell, while the plants have chloroplast. Chloroplast is the green coloring matter in a leaf of a plant. Number 5, the animal cell contain ribosomes, while the plant cell have nucleus to the side of the cell. That is the similarities and the differences between animal and plant cell. Question 2 is about how do osmosis occur in plant and animal cells. First, we have to know what is osmosis. Osmosis is movement of water molecules from a region of high concentration to an area of low concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. That is the definition of osmosis. So, how does the different solution affect the cells? As we know, we have 3 solutions that are discussed in osmosis. First is hypertonic solution. This is a solution with a higher concentration of solutes outside the cell than inside the cell content. The second point is hypotonic solution. Hypotonic solution, it has a low concentration of solute outside the cell than inside the cell. Isotonic solution is the third one. It is a solution with an equal concentration of solute and cell content. So the isotonic has the both equal component of the cell. So what happens in an animal cell in hypertonic solution? Water will rush the cell by osmosis, which is not good for cell because the cell will burst. This is the process called hemolysis. Hemolysis is where the cell will swell and then burst because of the water content inside the cell is high. In the case of plant cells, actually they prefer hypotonic solution because they have rigid cell wall that needs extra water inside them. So they have to stay rigid and firm, whereby they will become flaccid, and therefore the plant cell will wilt. This is because animal cells have no cell wall to stop them from swelling too much, and so they keep swelling until they burst. The isotonic solution will have an equal concentration, so they will have no effect on the isotonic. Plant cell will also not swell because of it has become flaccid in the case of hypotonic solution. Another question is about the types of respiration. Now, what is respiration? Respiration is a process of releasing energy from the breakdown of glucose. It is a process of releasing energy from breakdown of glucose, and it takes place in every living cell. So each and every living cell has to undergo the respiration process. We have two types of respiration. One is aerobic respiration, which involves the use of oxygen. Aerobic respiration that has life. So it means they do breathe, and they respire. The first point is that the first characteristic of living things is that they enable movement and locomotion. Movement and locomotion involves changes in response to environment. So, living things will make changes in response to a stimulus in the environment through the process of movement and locomotion. Second point is reproduction. It occurs through ways whereby there is production of another living things through fusion of the gametes. And there are two types of reproduction, but we have sexual and asexual. And they must occur to ensure life continues. Asexual, it is a means by which the budding method occurs, the sporangial generation occurs in any living creature, while sexual reproduction involves fusion of the male and female gametes so as to produce a living creature. That is reproduction. The third point is irritability and sensitivity. All living things have ability to sense and respond to stimuli around them, such as light, temperature, gravity, and chemical substances. That is sensitivity. How they respond in their environment. The fourth is excretion. What is excretion? Excretion is the process of getting rid of waste products which might be poisonous in our bodies. Those waste products may poison the cells inside our bodies. So they have to be released outside our bodies so as life to continue for every living thing. The fifth point is respiration. What is respiration? This is a process whereby energy is released from substances in all living things. Living things break down food within the cells and then they release energy. Number 6, nutrition. What is nutrition? It is a process by which living things take in materials from their surroundings through the use of growth, and they also provide energy. Number 7 is growth. Growth involves the increase of cells in size. They may grow rapidly, others may also grow in a slow manner. Living things do not have cells to grow to a certain size and then they divide. An organism gets larger as the number of cells in it increases. So growth should occur in each and every living creature. Now those are the points about the characteristics of living organisms. The 7th question is about explain factors in an ecosystem. Explain factors in ecosystem that affect the ecosystem either biotically or abiotic. Abiotic factors include light, temperature, atmospheric pressure, salinity, humidity, pH, wind, and speed. Light is the primary source of energy to almost all ecosystems, whereby light energy is used by the heterotrophs to manufacture food by the process of photosynthesis. Heterotrophs are the organisms that do not make their own food. So they have to use energy, to use the light energy, so as to manufacture their food by the process of photosynthesis. The second one is temperature. It influences the distribution of plants and animals. The occurrence of frost is an important action to determine distribution of plants in an ecosystem. Wind. Wind is a speed, direction, and it has speed, direction, and strength. This is as a result of expansion of air and conversion in the mid-latitude. The biotic factors. These are involves any living components and their interaction. It involves the producers. In an ecosystem, producers are the green plants, where they convert food into energy. The other one is herbivores, whom depend on producers, like they involve animals like goats, cows, zebras, etc. The other one is predators. These are the carnivores. They feed on meat, and they also depend on both plants and animals. The fourth one is the parasites, like ticks, sessile flies, mosquitoes, and the others. These depend on hosts for their feeding module. The fifth one are the decomposers. These are the components which break chemicals from organic evolution. Evidences of organic evolution. What is evolution? Evolution is a process by which the living creatures or living things came into existence. It involves how the old creatures came to existence and who we are as human beings. Organic evolution has some of the following evidences. One is fossil records. These are the remains of traces of living organisms that no longer exist. So it means they existed before, but now they doesn't exist. The fossils have to be preserved in ice, sedimentary rocks, amber, and tar. Others have been formed from petrification or the replacement of tissues by the minerals, producing a stone replica of the original material. So the fossil records, it can be like the skulls of the living organisms, which had been used before, and now it is there to identify that those fossil records existed one day in one's time. The fossil records, they have to be, even the presence of the sedimentary rocks in the physical features like rivers, lakes, there you can identify them. The second one is comparative anatomy. This is where it compares the anatomy of the creatures, where the similarities of different creatures exist in their lives. This is the similarity of the basic structures that exist between different organisms. This involves the homologous structures. Homologous structures are the same parts from different organisms of different origin and structure, like the appendages of the mammals, like the appendage of the human, of a man, is like that of the chimpanzee. So that is an evidence to show that the evolution has occurred. The other one is analogous structures. These are the structures that are different, but they are the same. They are from the same origin, and they have a common ancestor. The different part of the organism have the same organism have different parts. That identifies that they have come from the common ancestor. The third point is comparative embryology. Embryology is the study of the embryos. An embryo is the part after the formation after the conception is the part formed so as to form a zygote and form a baby into an adult creature. Some creatures have to originate so as to have the same embryos so as to come into an existence. This points out that there was once evolution in life. You may find that the embryo of a man and an embryo of a dog looks alike. This signifies that the evolution once occurred in time. The third point is comparative cytology. Cytology is the study of the cells. Cell is the basic and structural part of an organism. The cell organelles are structurally and functionally similar in most organisms, e.g., for example, almost all cells organelles contain DNA. Like if you see the mitochondria consists of DNA, and even the cytoplasm contains DNA. That signifies that it is a feature of evolution. And once the cells contain the similar components like those cell organelles. The other one is geographical distribution. Various structures and parts were distributed in different parts of the country and the different parts of nation to signify that once evolution occurred. Next question, discuss the types of muscles. First, we have skeletal muscle. It is voluntary. This means it is something that is moving. These muscles are attached to bones and are responsible for their movement. They consist of long fibers and striated due to the repeating patterns of the myofilaments. These are the attachment of the body parts to the muscle. The skeletal muscle is found in most of our body organelles like stomach and alimentary canals, the kidneys, livers, all of them, those organs. Second one is cardiac muscle. It is found in the heart. It is structured like the skeletal muscle, but the difference is that the skeletal muscle is that its plasma membrane causes the muscle to beat even when you are away. Like if you place your hand in the heart of a dead person, still if he had died an hour before, still the heart will be pumping. This is because of the muscle's presence in the heart, the cardiac muscle. The third muscle is the smooth muscle, which is involuntary. This doesn't move. It is not structured like in cardiac and skeletal muscles. It is found in organs like stomach and it enables functions such as digestion and respiration processes. Those are the three types of muscles in our bodies. The next question, discuss the nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is found in atmosphere and it comprises of 78%. So the atmosphere is made of nitrogen gas. The plants get nitrogen that they need from the soil. This is through the use of their roots, whereby they absorb the nitrogen present in the soil, of which it is from the atmosphere. The nitrogen cycle involves 4 processes. The first one is nitrogen fixation. This involves the atmospheric fixation, whereby we have to use the lightning from atmosphere. The lightning is produced from the atmosphere, so it has to fix nitrogen in the living creatures. The second one is biological fixation. This involves the use of certain microbes in symbiotic relationship with some plants and animals, like the use of the microbes like the trivers, whereby they convert the nitrogen in the atmosphere into the most functioning and life part of an animal. Industrial fixation. This is whereby nitrogen is used in industries for manufacture of different types of products, like ammonia is produced by nitrogen and hydrogen. The second process that involves nitrogen is atmospheric fixation. High energy by lightning breaks the nitrogen molecules and enables their atoms to combine with oxygen in the air, forming nitrogen oxide. This is whereby we have the components like nitrogen 4 oxide, nitrogen 2 and nitrogen 1 oxides. They are formed through the process of atmospheric fixation. The third one is nitrification. Nitrification involves the combination of ammonia, whereby it is taken direct from the plants and it is then converted into nitrates through the use of nitrosomonas bacteria, and also it is converted into nitrates through the use of nitrobacter bacteria. This is whereby ammonia is converted into nitrates through the use of nitrosomonas bacteria. The bacteria have to be there so that the process may occur. And also ammonia is converted into nitrates through the use of nitrobacter bacteria. The other process is the nitrification. This is whereby there is removal of nitrogen from atmosphere and it is passed through the ecosystem. It is like whereby nitrates are converted into atmospheric nitrogen in the air. This process involves it reduces nitrates into nitrites. Remember, nitrates and nitrates are different. Nitrate has a symbol of NO3 minus sign, and nitrates is NO2 and a minus sign, whereby through the nitrification process, it is converted into nitrogen in the air. An example of the nitrogen cycle is through whereby the precipitation process in the atmosphere, where it rains, and where rains consist of lightning structures, like lightning where it strikes to produce rain, and therefore it has to give rise to plants where animals shall feed on them. And then the same animals will just produce the organic matter, the fecal matter of the animals, whereby the same animal will feed on the plant through the process of mineralization. Also, the lightning process has to give rise to the rain, whereby the animals will have to, the same organic matter produced with that will have to be combined into ammonia, which is one of the microbes, whereby ammonia is converted to nitrates through the process of nitrification. Then nitrates are composed into nitrates through the same process of nitrification as we had said before, whereby the nitrates are consumed by the plants through the process of nitrification to give rise to gases like nitrogen and nitrogen 4 oxide. Also, the fuel emission in industries, the process that we had said, the industrial process, that is one of the process of nitrogen, whereby there is production of various gases, and the emission of the fuel is just directed again to the nitrogen, which is in the atmosphere. Adaptation of ileum to its function. Ileum is the part in small intestine where absorption and digestion of food particles occur in an animal. One of its adaptations is that ileum has goblet cells that secrete mucus, allowing for smooth movement of food and products. So the mucus produced has to smoothen the food that is being digested and absorbed in the body. Those are through the use of the goblet cells in the ileum. The second point is that they are very long to provide the large surface area for absorption and digestion. So the small intestine is about 25 centimeters. So that this tells us that it is long so as to provide a large surface area for food absorption and digestion. It is highly folded. The ileum is highly folded or coiled to allow slow movement of food, so as to allow more time for digestion to occur in an animal. The ileum, it has to be highly coiled. Leave alone be long, it has also to be coiled so as to create more time for absorption and digestion of food during the digestion process. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.
School TV, in collaboration with the Management University of Africa, offers Bachelor of Arts in Development Studies with the options of Entrepreneurship Development, Project Management, Economic Development, and Environmental Management. Accredited by the Commission of University Education, the uniqueness of the program classes delivery offered by Management University of Africa. Lectures are done through television on School TV channel 115 on Star Times and other decoders. Tuition is free and one is only required to pay for admission and examination. For more information, call 0722224193 or 07060352 44 or email admission@mua.ac.ke.
Yes, welcome once again in our business lesson. Kefa Munge Chacha, we are going to learn business and the topic is money and banking. So in this topic we are going to look at how the money has evolved since the traditional methods of trading up to the current methods of trading. So for that case we have to start with the first type of business or trade that we used to have, that is the barter trade, and we are going to see how this kind of business or trade was taking place within the society that used to exist those days. So when talk about barter trade, this is just barter trade that involves the exchange of goods and services for other goods or services in a given market. So when talk about the barter trade, we are just referring to that type of business or trade that involves the exchange of goods for goods or for other services in a given market. So in this type of business, we realize that when these traders are engaged in this type of business, they just exchange those goods and services that they have in the market. If we can just give an example, it's a place or a point whereby maybe if somebody is serving maize in a given market, can just exchange this one with a service like now a medical service, or at the same case can exchange this one with another commodity, like this person can be given maybe a dairy milk, a dairy cow for milk for that case. So you can just be able to see that when talk about the barter trade, we are just referring to that exchange of goods for goods and either for services without the engagement of money in the business or within the given market for that transaction. So when talk about this our barter trade, it has some advantages that the users of this type of business enjoy in a given market. Like now we can just talk about the first advantage of this barter trade is that you realize that this type of trade enables the buyers to get the goods or services immediately after the transaction. So you realize that when the buyers go to the market for them to get the goods and services they want, is that they exchange whatever they have immediately as they are given what they want from the given market. Like now, if somebody wants to exchange a cow with maize, this person cannot go to the market, he sells the cow to get money and then goes to another market to look for maize. So you realize that at this point there is that instant of getting what you want, because once you exchange your maize with a cow, you just get the cow and then you go back from where you came from with whatever you wanted. So there is not that transactions that come out of one commodity that somebody wants in a market. So you just exchange immediately and then you get whatever you want. If it is a service, you just get it at that point and then you say that you have done a business transaction. At the same case, this type of business, it just enables one to dispose of the surplus. You realize that when we have these producers that have produced more than they want for their consumption, you get that they can just be able to dispose the surplus in the market. Like now, if somebody is engaged in producing beans and he has produced more than he wants or he can be able to consume, he can just take the surplus to the market, and then in return it's just going to exchange with another commodity that is not able to produce. Like now, you can just exchange the surplus you have in maize with the sorghum that you are not able to produce in your farm. So in this type of transaction, you get that somebody is able to expose or dispose of the surplus that has come out in the process of producing a certain product. At the same case, you get that this barter trade, it is trying to promote the understanding among the trading partners you get that in those days when people used to practice this barter trade, you get that people from different communities, because you get that different communities used to specialize in a specific commodity because of some other factors that may favor them to produce one commodity and not the other one. So you get that when these given communities used to engage in a given place for these transactions, it promoted the understanding among the communities, and because of this you get that people were able to live in harmony, and then they avoided the conflict that might arise within the communities. So you get that when people come together for this barter trade, they just get understanding each other, so that they can be able to understand the culture of the other community, and then they can just exchange some cultural practices, and at the end of it they get to understand each other, and then they live in harmony and peace within that given place. At the same case, this type of business can promote specialization, because you get that one community can just be able to specialize in producing one commodity, because you understand that as you move from one place to another place, we have some external factors that facilitates or influences the production of a certain commodity. So you get that those people who are favored to produce a certain commodity can just specialize on that one, knowing that after producing this one with a surplus, they just take the surplus to the market, and then they just exchange to get what they are not favored to produce from their place of production. So you can just be able to see that this barter trade actually promoted specialization, because you get that some communities were specializing in producing maize and even other food like sorghum, and then they just take this surplus to other communities, that like now the pastoralists, to exchange with milk and other dairy products for that case. So you can see that this type of business or trade is trying to promote specialization in a given field, depending on some other factors that can encourage people to produce a specific product or a specific service. Like now you get that if somebody is a traditional doctor, this person cannot get time to go to the farm to produce food for the family. So what is going to take place is that those people who come to his place for the medical services, they just come with food. Like now they can just come with sorghum, like maize and other food product, and at the end of it they get in return the service that caters for their medical needs. At the same case, this our barter trade, it enables people to enjoy high standards of living, because you get that when people are trying to exchange these goods for goods or goods for services, you get that it is trying to uplift their living standards. How? So you get that when these people are trying to exchange, if somebody or the people from a specific community is just producing one type of product, and in the process of this barter trade they are going to get more products, so these other products are going to uplift their living standards. Like now you can just be able to see that people are trying to dispose of the surplus, and you realize that if these people could have retained the surplus in their places, this surplus could have been gone to a waste, because they are not going to consume those given surplus products that they have managed to produce. So because of this exchange and disposing of the surplus, you get that the living standards of these people is being uplifted through this our barter trade. So you can just be able to see that these are some of the advantages or the benefits that when people were trying to engage this our barter trade used to enjoy from the market. And in most cases you get that this type of trade was taking place early 1990s, because of money system has not evolved to the point that people could have engaged in other transaction method, not barter trade. But at the same case you realize that even though this our barter trade has these advantages, it is faced with some limitations that makes it not possible to take place. So you get that sometimes when you just take your product or your service to the market and you want to dispose it off, there is some limitations that you might face, and then at the end of the day you get that you are not going to attain or undertake a given transaction with your product. So the following are some of the limitations that the barter trade faces in a market. Like now get that this type of trade requires the double coincidence of wants. So for the barter trade transaction to take place, we must have what we call it the double coincidence. So when talk about this double coincidence, it's a point whereby if, for instance, you are trying to dispose of your maize as the product you want to take to the market, and in return you just want to exchange this one with a specific product, like now maybe the dairy product like milk. So it means that for you to have that transaction in the market, once you reach that market, you must get the same person who has the product you want and who needs the product that you want to dispose. So you must get somebody who has milk in the market, and this person is in need of the maize that you want to dispose. So sometimes it is by chance that you can just go to the market with your product, and at the end of the day you get somebody who is trying to dispose what you need at the same case who needs what you want to dispose. So sometimes this barter trade faces the limitation of the double coincidence that must prevail in the market for this type of business or transaction take place. At the same case, you get that this our barter trade, sometimes it lacks the standard of measure of value. Sometimes you get that these people, they are not able to value their products and services in the market. Like now, you cannot be able to know exactly what quantity of maize can be exchanged with a dairy cow, because there is no standard of measure of value of these different commodities and services. At the same case, when people are exchanging goods and services, if you exchange a medical service with maize, it is not easy to determine the value of medical service that you have been given, and then now you give out the exact value of maize that can be able to disclose with what you have received as a service for that case. So this type of trade sometimes is faced with this type of limitation, whereby there is lack of the standard measure or value of these given goods and services that are engaged in the barter trade. At the same case, you get that the individuality of some commodities without loss of value. So you get that we have some commodities that sometimes they can just be able to lose value, and other commodities can be able to maintain value. Like now, when you just deal with the perishable goods, that sometimes as time goes by, they can just be able to lose their value. So by the time you wait for somebody who wants that your product and who can just give in return of what you want, you can just be able to get that some of the goods are going to lose value in the market, and at the end of the day, they are not going to facilitate the transaction to take place in that given market. And then there is that problem of the storing of commodities for future exchange. We have some commodities that cannot be stored for future exchange. Why? Because of maybe their value can just go down because of their durability for that case. At the same case, some goods are so fragile that they cannot be able to be stored, and you get that we even have some goods which are somehow obsolete, that is, they lose value as time goes by. So you get that some of the commodities are faced with this challenge of storing them for future exchange. Like now, you cannot be able to store milk for future exchange, because we understand that this kind of commodity, it has a specific time that it can be able to be in use. So you get that this barter trade is faced with this challenge of storing of some commodities for future exchange. And then we have the problem of transporting the heavy commodities to given market. You can just get that you have produced some commodities which are too heavy for it to be transported to the marketplace. And because of this, you get that it is not easy to take some of the commodities to the market. Because you get that when we have this barter trade used to take place in those early days, whereby the transport facilities was not well equipped. So you get that, like now, carrying the surplus of maize for a longer distance sometimes is not easy for that case. So you get that transporting these given goods is very hard for you to be able to undertake this given transaction in a specific market because of the transportation problems that you might face. And then you get that there is lack of standard of deferred payment. You get that there is no way people can be able to exchange their goods and services and then they defer payment to future dates, because you get that it is not easy for them to determine how much will be able to settle this dates at later dates because there is no standard of deferred payment, as we can be able to see that this needs people to exchange these goods and services on the spot and then they seal the transaction. But for the deferred payment, there is no that standard which can be able to enable them to understand that in a specific time that is about to come, we need this amount of this commodity for it to settle this given transaction. So you can just be able to see that this our barter trade is faced with different limitations as we have seen. And because of these limitations of barter trade, then now we are supposed to look at the evolution of money system. So we get that when people were trying to engage in this given barter trade, actually there is a point whereby they were facing these different limitations, and then they said that now we must get a different way of doing our trade because this barter trade has so many challenges for us to overcome. And because of this, then we came up with what we call the money system. So actually when we talk about money, it's just that anything that is generally accepted as a medium of exchange for goods and services. So when you talk about money, is anything that's accepted by maybe a given market or a given locality for that case as a medium of exchange of goods and services in a given market. So people can just accept that now let's use this given item as a medium of exchange of any goods and services. So you get that when people are taking their goods and services to the market, they try to value their goods and services in terms of money value. And then because of this, you get that they can just be able to facilitate their transaction. So you get that this money system actually has solved the problem of double coincidence, because you get that for you to exchange your commodity under barter trade, you need to get somebody who needs the specific commodity and the same case has what you need. And because of this, sometimes transaction taking place becomes hard. But now under the money system, you can just exchange your commodity or your surplus in the form of money, and then now you can just go to a different market with the money that you have gotten from the previous disposal, and then now you can be able to acquire whatever you want. So when you talk about this money, it has some characteristics or properties that can be able to make it to be recognized as a medium of exchange for goods and services. So the first characteristics of money is that this money should be accepted to everyone within a given locality or a given market. So for the money to be used as a medium of exchange, every person in that given market must accept that this money can be used as a medium of exchange for these goods and services. There is no way somebody can accept as a certain item as money for exchange unless this person is able to accept that as a currency of exchange. Like now you get that if you take an example of a country like Kenya, we have our own currency that every person in Kenya accepts and understands that this given currency is what we can be able to use to exchange our goods and services. We cannot just be able to use the same currency in another country. Like now we cannot take the Kenyan shillings to Uganda and then we use it for exchange, because the people who are found in those markets have not accepted that specific item as a medium of exchange for their goods and services. At the same case, you get that for this given money to function in the market, it should be disposable into smaller units. So you can just be able to divide or dispose this your money into smaller units for it to function as the medium of exchange. So there is no way you can be able to get a specific item that cannot be able to be divisible to smaller units for smaller commodities and services, because you get that different items and commodities have different economic value. So we must be able to measure this, the economic value of these goods and services, into different units of money. So for the money to be accepted, it must be something that can be able to be divisible into smaller units that can be able to be used for the transaction of small units in a given market. At the same case, this money should be able to last for longer time without getting defaced for that case. So get that for a given item to be used as a means of exchange or a medium of exchange in the form of money, it must be an item or a substance that is durable for that case, that can be used for a longer time. You cannot expect to use a given item as a medium of exchange, whereby now at the end of the day it is going to lose its value because of its durability for that case. So for the given item, for it to function as money, it must be something that can at least last for a longer time, so that it can be used for a longer time in business transaction. At the same case, you have to know that it should be able to last for for a longer time without losing value. So you get that we understand that there is time value for money. For that case, we know that money keeps on losing value as time goes by because of inflation. So there is no way we can just be able to use a given item or a given substance as a medium of exchange if this item is something that can lose value within a short period of time. We have to know that if a given value is estimated to have 1,000 shillings at this moment, it must be able to retain that value for the next, say, 10 years. But if it is something that tomorrow is going to have a different value because of the loss of value, then we can say that this one is not an acceptable medium for the business transactions, and then we cannot be able to use it as money in the business transactions. At the same case, you have to get that this should be fairly scarce in supply. For a given substance to be used as a medium of exchange, it should not be supplied in an unlimited way, because you get that money must be scarce so that it has its value. If somebody or every person is accessible to the amount of money that they want, you get that this money should not be having the value that it's supposed to have in the market. So the supply of money must have a limit so that it can be able to retain its values. So you can just be able to see that for a given substance or a given commodity to be used as a medium of exchange in the form of money, it must be able to have these given properties we have discussed, and then it is going to enable it to be used as a medium of exchange. So let's now discuss about the functions of money. So you get that this given money that is used as a medium of exchange in a given market, it serves different functions. And the first one is that this money acts as a medium of exchange for goods and services. So you get that for the goods and services to be exchanged in the market, we must use this money as a medium of exchange. Because nowadays there is no way you can just be able to go to the market and then you exchange your goods for goods or for other services. For that case, we must have this money as a medium of exchange. At the same case, you get that money acts as a measure of value. Because you know that nowadays all the commodities and services in any given market, they must be valued in terms of money value. It must be valued that this one is worth this amount of money. So you get that the valuers and those people, the analysts for that case, for them to give out the value of a given commodity, they must quote the amount of money that is worth that given service or that given commodity. At the same case, this given money serves as a unit of account. You get that when people are trying to account for business transactions, they have to account them in terms of money value. There is no way we can just be able to account for a given commodity like maize without giving it its value in money form. Like now, we just account for maize like it is worth 10,000. For that case, you can just be able to see that this money is trying to act as a unit of account because it's the one which is used to account for the business transactions. At the same case, it serves as a store of value. You get that when a given commodity is being exchanged for money, this money is just but stored somewhere to have the value of that given commodity. So you get that these given commodities are just stored in money form, and at the end of the day, it is trying to store the value of different commodities. Like now, you just have a certain asset that you want to dispose of. You just take it to the market, then you are given the money that is worth that given commodity, and then maybe you can just be able to keep this your money in a given bank, and then you say that you have stored the value of that given commodity in money form. At the same case, this given money acts or serves as a standard of deferred payment. So when we have the credit business transactions taking place, this given agreement is that it is going to be settled in a later date in terms of money. Like now we can just get that a credit transaction which is worth 50,000, and then the agreement of the people who are doing this type of business transaction is that in a specific period of time, the given debt must be settled down in a specific amount of money. So at the end of the day, I want to realize that this given money is just but serving as a standard of deferred payment. And then now let's just talk about the demand for money. So you get that different people have the demand for money, and then you get that this one is just derived because of some other needs that people have for their own needs and transactions. So when talk about the demand for money, we are just but referring to the tendency of individuals to hold out money for future, or instead of spending for future transactions. So you get that there is that tendency of people trying to hold the amount of money for the future transactions. They are not ready to spend the money now, but they are trying to keep it for other future transactions. So because of this, you get that these people are tried to, or they are driven by different motives that makes them to try to hold the money instead of spending them on a specific time for that case. So you get that the first motive that is trying to drive these people from holding this money is that it is because of the transactive motive. So you get that these people are trying to hold money to execute for the daily transactions or the daily needs for that case. You get that for people to survive, there are those specific and daily transactions that they must undertake. So you get that people are trying to keep this money so that this money is going to assist them to undertake those daily transactions, like now buying food and paying for other bills for that case for the people to survive. So this given transactive motive is one of the best motives that is trying to drive people to hold money instead of spending them in the current period. At the same case, there is what called the precautionary motive. You get that this one is whereby people are trying to take some precaution that anything can happen, like an accident or a given risk might occur. For that case, they have to use money to get out of that given risk that might occur in a later date. And then we have what called the speculative motive. This is whereby people are trying to speculate that there is something good that might take place, like now they might think that in the latter date the prices of goods and services is going to go down so that they can just be able to enjoy getting those given goods. At the same case, they might speculate the investment opportunities that is expected to come as time goes by. So you can just be able to see that we have these three motives that makes people to hold money instead of spending them on a current date. So you can just be able to see that this is what we talk about the money system. We have seen how money is able to be used for different functions. We have talked about the different properties of money. At the same case, we have seen how money has tried to evolve to this current date. So because of time, let's stop at that point. I just have to give you an assignment whereby I just want you to discuss three functions of money in a given market, and then you can just be able to send us your discussions through the number you can be able to see on our screen. And maybe if you just have inquiries, you still can just be able to contact us using the same number, and then we can just be able to give you the feedback. Thank you so much for your time you have given to this our lesson. Let's meet in our next lesson. Thank you so much.
This is SBTV.
How are you? Thank you for choosing us and for joining us on School Pacific Television. I am your host Sylvia Nyaga. I'm going to take you through English in functional writings. In English, we have different types of functional writings. We have got letters, whereby in letters we have different types of letters. We have official letters, we have friendly letters, we have job application letters, we have apology letters, and many more. We also have minutes. We have reports, we have memoranda, commonly known as memo. We have curriculum vitae, commonly known as CV. We have notices, we have condolence notes, among many other forms of functional writing. And today, I would like us to tackle some of these functional writings, of which I would like us to begin with a memoranda, commonly known as a memo. What is a memoranda? It's a form of writing that is used for communication. It's commonly used as a form of communication internally in an institution. It's used as an internal form of communication in an institution. When writing a memo, neutral tone should be used. What do I mean by saying neutral tone? You shouldn't be authoritative, as in you're talking like you're authorizing someone. You should use neutral tone. A memo, it's used to also provide written record in future. What are the functions of a memo? A memo is used to request. For example, you are a patron of a certain department in an institution. Let's say, for example, you could be a patron of the journalism club in a high school, and you want to meet the members of the journalism club. You use a memo to request the members to meet you. That is one function of a memo. Requesting. It's used to request. Number two, a memo is used to inform. You could be the chairperson of a certain department in an institution, and there was a scheduled meeting with the members of that department, but because of an unavoidable circumstance, the meeting had to be scheduled for another day or another time. You would write a memo to inform the members that the meeting has been rescheduled. That is another function of a memo. What else does a memo do? A memo is used to report. For example, there would have been some competition in the institution, and the winners are to be known. Maybe they are to proceed to another higher level. A memo is used to report the members who have won in the competition. That is another function of a memo. A memo is also used to remind. In an institution, maybe someone in a higher rank, like maybe the managing director, was to meet the subordinate staff in the institution. A memo would be used to communicate to the subordinate staff and to remind them that they're supposed to meet the managing director. That's another function of a memo. A memo is also used to promote goodwill. What do I mean by promoting goodwill? You could use it to commend someone for good work. You're promoting goodwill by commending someone. Maybe you are the principal of a school, and after the KCSE results are out, they are so good. The students did so well. You would write a congratulatory memo to the teachers, specific teachers of whose subjects and performed so well. You're promoting goodwill to the teachers. You would promise them of some motivation because of the good work they are doing. That's how a memo is used to promote goodwill. Another function of a memo, it is used to warn. What do I mean by warning? Maybe there are some people with some weird behavior, for example, students in an high school. The principal of this high school would use a memo to warn, to give consequences that would follow in case of certain behaviors in the school from the students. This is how a memo is used to warn. Now that we've seen the functions of a memo, that we've said one is to request, to report, to inform, to warn, and to promote goodwill among many others, we look at the advantages that will make us use a memo. As we said earlier on, there are many forms of functional writing, but why use a memo? It has its advantages, which are, number one, a memo is quick. How is a memo quick? A memo does not take much time to write compared to other forms of writing and other forms of communication. It's quick. You take a pen and a paper, it's so quick to communicate through a memo. Another advantage of a memo is that it's brief. It doesn't take a whole lump sum of work to communicate through a memo. It's brief. You only write who you are, to whom you're communicating to, and the content, the information that you want to pass on to the recipient. That's how brief a memo is. Why? Another advantage of a memo is that it's convenient compared to other forms of writing. What do I mean by convenient? A memo is not like a letter that you will write, take to the poster, and you're not even sure whether it reaches the recipient or it's going to reach the recipient. So, how is it convenient? A memo, as we said earlier on, it is used to communicate internally in an institution or in an organization. So when you write a memo and you place it in a convenient place that where the people in the institution will pass by and see it, for example, in a notice board, it means that it's convenient. It will be seen and it will pass the intended information. Another advantage of a memo is that it's inexpensive. How do I mean by inexpensive? It's not costly. Preparing a memo is not costly. That's how I mean by saying that it's inexpensive. Another advantage of a memo, it's used as a written record. How do I mean a written record? For example, in verbal communication, you communicate and there are no records made. No place is recorded that you said this on this day at this time. But for a memo, it's written. It will clearly show what you communicated to who on what date. And in case it will be needed in future for reference, that will be good. It will serve as an evidence in future. That is another advantage of a memo. And now that we know what a memo is, its functions, its advantages, how do we write a memo? Format of writing a memoranda. To begin with, as we said, a memo is used as a form of communication internally in an institution. So this memo, it should have a letterhead. A letterhead, it is the heading of the institution in which the memo is communicating, in which the memo is passing the information. For example, it could be the chairperson of the nursing department in the Kenya Medical Training College that is communicating to the members of the nursing department. The letterhead of this memo, it will be Kenya Medical Training College, because this memo is intended to communicate internally in the Kenya Medical Training College. After the letterhead, the memo should have the recipient. Who is the recipient? The recipient is the person receiving the information in the memo. the person to whom the memo is communicating. Number 3, after we have got the recipient, you should let us know the person communicating. This is the sender. After we have the sender, we have the date on which the memo is written. After the date, we go to the subject. And before you write the subject, you skip a line. Then you write the subject. After in the subject, you write the title of what you want to communicate. After you write the subject, you move ahead and include your body, the content of the information that you are communicating. After you've written the content of what you are communicating, you sign below the memo. You sign, you write your real name, and after writing your real name, you write your designation. What do I mean by designation? You write who you are. You could be the chairperson, you could be the principal, you would be the managing director. Whatever title that you withhold, that is your designation. For example, you would put your sign, your name, and who you are. For example, you would be the secretary. And having done this, you will have written a very good memo. And now, I would like us to write an example of an internal memo. Imagine you are the chairperson of the Department of Education in the Kenya Methodist University. Write a memo to the students in the education department informing them of the rescheduling of the examination dates. Now that we've learned the format of writing a memo, how do we write this kind of memo? As we said, we begin with the letterhead. The question said very well that you're the chairperson of the education department in the Kenya Methodist University. So our letterhead here will be Kenya Methodist University. Then, who are receiving the information? The students in the education department. So, who is the recipient? For the recipient, we write to. You're writing all the students from chairperson, department, of education, date, October 2014. As you said, you skip a line before you write the subject. So you skip a line, then you write the subject. That is change and you underline. After that, you write the body. That is the content. You write to the students, for example, we say that it's brief. So you could say, due to unavoidable circumstances, the scheduled dates of examination have been changed. Please visit the notice board to confirm from the new timetable. Sorry for any inconveniences made. That would be the content of the body. After which, you come below here, you sign. You write your name, that is your real name. And who you are, that is the chairperson. So that's how we write a memo, and you'll be an English student, a smart English student who is able to write a memo. Thank you for staying with me. We'll go for a short break. We'll meet you after that break. Before we went for the break, we discussed a memo and we learned the format of writing a memo and many more things about a memo. And now I would like us to look at a curriculum vitae. What is a curriculum vitae? Many people talk of it as a CV. What is this CV? What is a CV? A CV is a brief account of a person's education. That is your educational background. It's a brief account. You don't give into so much details. It's just a brief account of a person's educational background, your qualifications, that is professional qualifications, previous experiences, that is typically sent with a job application. A CV is commonly used as an attachment to a job application letter. It provides a summary of someone's experience in the field of work and skills. So now, how is a CV written? The format of writing a curriculum vitae, commonly known as a CV. To begin with, you begin with your personal data. Also known as biodata. What is expected of the personal data or the biodata? You've written a letter, you want a job. This person doesn't know you, has never encountered you anywhere, but you want a job from this employer. So the personal data or the biodata will give the information of who you are to your employer. This will include your name, your address, your date of birth, your nationality, your national identity number, your marital status, personal data. It's about you, it's about who you are. So, the curriculum vitae will have your name, your ID number, that is your national identity number, your date of birth, your address, your marital status. What do you mean by marital status? Are you married? Are you single? Are you divorced? Are you widowed? That's what we mean by marital status. It should also include your email if you have one, and the languages that you speak. If you speak English, include it there. If you speak Swahili, include it there. If you speak French, include it there. The languages that you can speak, let them be included in the personal data of your curriculum vitae. After you've written your personal data, you write your educational background. Or qualifications. With your educational background, it gives the information of the education that you've got to where you are. And when you're writing your education background, you begin with the latest. What do I mean with the latest? The current one. Maybe you joined your nursery school in the year 1992. You don't begin with that, you begin with the latest, which is your current level of education. For example, we could say (2010 to 2014), you are in the Kenyatta University. And what were the achievements that you got in that institution? In the educational background, you include the duration of time, the institution in which you are in, and the qualifications that you got from that particular institution. 2010 to 2014, you told us you were in Kenyatta University. What did you get from that place? Maybe you got a first class honor, and a bachelor of pricing. Then from there, you go to the other level of education, that is your high school level. We could say, for example, 2004 to 2008. Where were you? Would say from my high school, Eldoret, KCSE certificate. With a grade B+. And before you joined Moi High School, Eldoret, where were you? We could say, for example, 1994 to 2003, you were in Betty Academy. You got your KCP certificate, which you had 352 marks. That is what is included in the educational background or the educational qualifications. After the educational background, we go to the professional qualifications or the professional background. What information is there in the professional background? You tell us, what have you done professionally, what duration, in what institution, and what did you do? For example, you would say, as you seen earlier on, you were in high school between 2008, 2004 and 2008, and you joined your campus between 2010 and 2014. This employer will wonder, what were you doing between 2008 and 2010? So the professional background and qualifications, you include what you've been doing professionally in your lifetime. For example, you could say between 2009 January to 2010 August, you worked as a peer teacher. Where? Maybe in your former high school, which in our case was Moi High School, Eldoret. What else would you have probably done? Maybe between 2003 to 2003 December to 2004 February, we worked as a voluntary, maybe voluntary marketer with the Uchumi supermarket. So the professional background, it gives us the information of what you have done professionally. Number 4, after you've told us what your professional qualifications are, you write down your hobbies. What are hobbies? Hobbies are these things that you like doing most during your leisure time. For example, maybe your hobby would be reading, traveling, watching, listening to music, making new friends. You list down what your hobbies are. You could say among many others. After you've told what your hobbies are, you give the referees. Who are referees? Referees are people who can be contacted to give a testimony about the information that you give in your curriculum vitae. In the referees, you give their names, their contact addresses, and their designation. Who are they? For example, you said you are a peer teacher at Moi High School Eldoret between 2009 January and 2010 August. So you could, for example, give the principal of Moi High School Eldoret as one of your referees. So you give the name of this principal, maybe Ronald Maranga. Who is this Ronald Maranga? You could give that as your referee. So, and that brings us to the end of the format of writing a curriculum vitae. As you have seen, a curriculum vitae has 5 parts. When you're writing, you first begin with the title, a curriculum vitae. That's what you're writing. Then you give your personal data, after which you give your educational background or qualifications. You then go ahead and give us your professional qualifications. You give your hobbies, and then you give your referees. And that is how we write a curriculum vitae. I do believe that after the long taken lesson, you can comfortably write a memoranda in the curriculum vitae. Thank you very much for keeping in touch with School Pacific Television. See you next time.
Audio Jungle.
School TV, in collaboration with the Management University of Africa, offers Bachelor of Arts in Development Studies with the options of Entrepreneurship Development, Project Management, Economic Development, and Environmental Management. Accredited by the Commission of University Education, the uniqueness of the program classes delivery offered by Management University of Africa. Lectures are done through television on School TV channel 115 on Star Times and other decoders. Tuition is free and one is only required to pay for admission and examination. For more information, call 0722224193 or 0706035244 or email admission@mua.ac.ke.
the day that I'm about to tell. If the day that I'm about to tell, I am to tell. I need to tell this is the day. You know, it's not a long ago story. Long ago, even before Manchester became united. Never. It's a day. Mr. Ronald Otieno Otieno that's your colony to Manchester. Let's go. The principal. Drama Borinella. The cook, school watchman, school head boy, the example, just a few to mention. And that is also to prove to you how hardworking is the officer class was. This officer class could wake up very early in the morning, that even before the boat closed, he was back from work. What do I mean? That left the entire Camagonian, while the need is my text. Me a hard work, he's a people. Wake up very early in the morning. In fact, he was the one waking up the cock. And reminding the cock to grow before it's late. My dear listeners, just to take you through Mr. Obiso's program of the school according to his diet. Very early in the morning, Mr. Obiso has to wake up, groom himself, drink the fresh bread, then he will go prepare breakfast. Whereby he'll hand up serving the children for breakfast. In the assembly, he was the only reason to speak. I know you're wondering why. Because he was the only one in charge of the school. And because he was everything in the school. After assembly, he would go from once. And from once, he would go for history lesson. He would confuse from once in history, claiming that Ramapidekas and Homopidekas were brothers. Whereby Homo and Homo erectus were twins. So Homo habilis was their brother. Immediately after history lesson, he will go for Kiswahili lesson. Mr. Wu, Mr. Okusabas. In Kiswahili also he'll ask from 3 red. Such question. Ni kama Juma, na je, Imanduku. Je, atakale kuku ya kina John. Atakale. My goodness. That was Mr. Okusabas' program. Morning session. Immediately at breakfast, Mr. Okusabas was with the foreign students. Whereby he told them how to project, pronounce, and how to be audible enough. For example, wametupasa tukajirusha. Wametupasa tukajirusha na bashasha. Tuulize. Wametupasa tukajirusha na bashasha. Tuhakikisha, tuadhimisha, wadhibitisha kwamba tuadhimisha kama gambo. Immediately after breakfast, Mr. Obiso was again busy with the debate plan. In the debate, we will suggest such motions. That if like science will not explain, and in case that motion will stay true, this is how we teach science in Kiswahili. Ni moja kwa moja kwenye sayansi, na lugha za kisayansi zipewe justice. Je, mwafahamu prosesi ya osmosis na termination nini? Lizingatiwe kwenye prosesi ya pollution nini? Ni lazima prosesi ya osmosis na termination nini? Lizingatiane. Mr. Obiso was the principal. One of the entire school never ever forever and never speak at class 3 English. Because it's only at class 3 who is allowed to say experience the best teacher. But every product from Kamatabo High School should never say experience the best teacher. But they should say experience the best yesterday's answer to today's question. That's just being a way. You also want them never ever repeat this. All work without play makes you an alcohol. That is a class 3 English. But they should be able to say constant education necessities goes without interview of Indonesian. Rena Jaka the Queen of Stella. That was very early. Before lunchtime. Immediately after lunchtime, after serving students lunch, he was again busy with the culture called truth, whereby he was not only the choreographer, but he was also the soloist. And this, what he did. could not manage until they decided to lament about the problem of the school. Oh, minalia kamagambo inatuaibisha. Mr. Otis anatusumbua. Oh, minalia kamagambo inatuaibisha. Mr. Otis anatuaibisha. The next morning, teachers, students, villagers, Bonabola riders, and even the Kamagabo Islands gathered at Kamagabo High School main gate, demanding for a possible solution. They demanded for an investigation to be done. Why? Because these officers had offended them. And so they decided investigation must be done. And so they sang a song.
Sisi sasa tunataka uchunguzi. Sisi sasa tunataka uchunguzi. Sisi sasa tunataka uchunguzi. Uchunguzi ufanyike.
The next morning, the board of governors something very terrible happened. Very terrible. Mr. Officer Black sneaked secretly with a type printed and sealed apology letter. And he agreed that man is fair. That a mistake is not a mistake until he is to correct it. And again, he said, and threatened the investigators that even Jesus says that if any one of you have never seen, be the first one to punish him. And so it was because, and it was due to Kamagamo peaceful nature that they decided to give Mr. Officer. This was back again at Kamagamo High School. When Mr. Officer sent back to the school, he dedicated duties appointed is running with. Gave more powers to the teachers, and this was back again at Kamagamo High School. And because it was one saying, where there is peace, peace shall prevail. And also because it was once quoted, that where there is enemy, there must be something cooking. And so there was a song that was sung in praise of this school. Though I can't remember the song very well. Yeah, I can play the song. Exactly how the song is. That's the song. When I'm here. With those few remarks, this brings us the big question of the day. Today, do you think our narration is effective and can also be effective in our society?
Today,
Please SMS your
yes or no.
Answer to our number
4822.
and after the end of this episode of narration, we shall sample some of your
Answers.
and also can call us directly. Yeah, this number is passing across your screen.
0700
Right?
987 654.
And because you all look digital, no analog is here, you can find us directly via our website.
www.kenyauniversity.com.
And also can Google this for the
www.otisodastheprinciple.com.
Alhamdulillah, inshallah, let's go.
Welcome to School Pacific TV, SPTV. My name is Nyukuri Edwin, your teacher of mathematics. We are in Form 4 Mathematics and our topic is Trigonometry 3. This is Lesson 3. Now in trigonometry, we had a number of parts that were discussed in Trigonometry 1 and 2. Now in this part, we are going to expound on what we had already discussed, and we are going to narrow down to what we call trigonometrical ratios. And we had 3 ratios starting from Trigonometry 1. The ratios are sine, we have cosine, and we have tangent. So in this part, or in this topic, we are going to do further on these 3 ratios. Now let us consider the following triangle, because these ratios come from a right angle triangle. When you look at the ratio of a given side over the other one, or to the other one, we get either the sine, the cosine, or tangent. So let us consider this triangle with an acute angle here, and we call it theta. Now let us have this point as A, this one B, and this other one C. So this one is a right angle triangle at point A with an acute angle theta at point B. So from this one here, we can still get the 3 ratios, the sine, the cosine, and the tangent. Now if we let the hypotenuse of this triangle to be a length A, that's now BC, to be A, then we can express these other 2 sides, AB and AC, in terms of the hypotenuse and the trigonometric ratios. So let us start with the sine of angle theta, and you use to express AB and AC in terms of A. So if we are to deal with sine theta, then from what we had discussed in Trigonometry 1, sine theta is given by the opposite, you divide by the hypotenuse. So the opposite to this angle here is the side AC. So we write AC over the hypotenuse, which is BC. So if you remember that very well, we had something to do with sine, opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, then tangent is opposite over adjacent. So we had that. So this is the sine theta equals to AC over BC. But now BC is length A. So we come here and we write AC over A. Then now we can express AC in terms of the sine of that angle theta with the side A or BC, which is the hypotenuse. So when we make AC the subject here, then AC will be equal to A sine theta. A sine theta for that part. So that's the hypotenuse, not the hypotenuse, the opposite. AC equals to A sine theta. Now let us come to the cosine. The cosine of this angle theta, remember the cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, it's AB over the hypotenuse BC. So it's AB over A. When we make AB the subject, in this case, our AB will be equal to this A here, multiplied by cos of theta. Therefore, this length will be AB in terms of the hypotenuse, and the cosine of the angle theta will be given as A cos theta. So this is A cos theta, while this opposite is A sine theta. So we have expressed all the sides in terms of A and the ratios, the 2 ratios, the sine, the cosine with the hypotenuse for those 2 sides. Now we come to Pythagoras theorem. If we apply the Pythagoras theorem in this case here, we know very well Pythagoras theorem applies to a right angle triangle. So when you square the base, AB squared, you add on to AC squared, you should get BC squared. So we use Pythagoras theorem. We have AB squared plus AC squared, you should get BC squared. Then we now come and substitute the length of each line. AB is A cos theta, so we shall write here A cos theta, then we square. AC is A sin theta, then we square. BC is A, so we write here A, then we square. Then we now simplify this part. This can also be written as, when you square A, you get A squared. When you square the cosine of theta, we write it as cos squared theta. Then this one, we get A squared, and we write this one as sine squared theta equals to A squared. So in writing the ratios when they're squared, we write with the square part coming in between the word and the theta or the angle representative. So we write it as cos squared theta, but not cos theta squared. We write with the square part coming first. So it is cos squared theta, meaning this part squared. Then sine squared theta, meaning sine that has been squared. This part squared. So we write as sine squared theta. So we get A squared squared on the other side. Then A squared is common. We can factor it out on the left hand side. Then we divide by it. Therefore we can have here cos squared theta plus sine squared theta into A squared, giving us A squared. So when we divide by cancelling, we shall end up with cos squared theta plus sine squared theta, giving us 1. So this is the important part, that you take cos squared theta plus sine squared theta to get 1. It becomes an important part using the two ratios, the sine and the cosine, from this right angle triangle, just the way we had it in form 2 or in trigonometry 1. Then another part, now that we have already used sine and cosine, let's come to the tangent. Tangent, from this part here, it is the opposite over adjacent. So the opposite here, from this triangle, the opposite in terms of length is A sine theta. So the tan theta will be A sine theta. Adjacent is this end here. Remember, there are only two parts. It's either opposite, adjacent, or the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse remains constant for the angle theta, whether you have the angle here or you have it up here. But the opposite and the adjacent, they interchange depending on the position of the angle. So tan theta equals to A sine theta. This is the adjacent for this angle here, which is A cos theta. Then you can cancel A, and we end up getting sine theta over cos theta. So this one is also an important part in this topic. Therefore, we have come up with two parts that we can use anywhere to work out. The first part is cos squared theta plus sine squared theta, you get 1. So it means that if you take an acute angle theta, find its cosine, square that cosine, then you add to the sine of that angle squared, you should get the value 1. That's the meaning of that. Take any angle. You can take, for instance, 30. Take the cosine of 30, square that number, put it aside. Then take the sine of 30 degrees, square whatever you get, then add onto the first part. The answer you get will be 1. That's what it means. Then this other part, it means that to get the tangent of theta, you take the sine of theta, you divide by the cosine of theta. So you can prove the same thing Or from here, if we worked out the tangent of theta alone, we will still get sin theta over cos theta. So you take the sine of that angle, you divide by its cosine, then the value you get is the tangent of that same angle. So these two parts are going to be applied in this topic, especially the first section, and in other section that will come later when you are applying to what you call trigonometrical equations. So let's start taking examples and see how we are required to use these sections, either the first part here or the second part. So we shall take an example here. If tan theta equals to A, show that cos theta sine squared theta plus cos cubed theta, you divide by sine theta, the answer you get is 1 over A. Now in this case, we have been given the first part very clearly, that tan theta equals to A. So it means that the answer you're going to get finally should be 1 over tan theta. So you're given this left hand side. So in other words, again, you have to work out the left hand side to get the answer on the right hand side, because the question is show that the left hand side equals to this answer here. So in this case, you are only going to use these two parts by substitution or whatever means that you're going to do. So you check where it is. Welcome back. Now before the break, we had taken this example here and we ended up proving that the left hand side actually gives us 1 over A up to this point here. I want us to take another example and see how questions are set in this section. So given that cos theta, so this is example 2. Given that cos theta equals to a quarter, find, without using tables or calculators, the value of 1 sine squared theta, 2 tan theta, then 3 cos theta plus sin theta. So you're not supposed to use mathematical tables, neither are you supposed to use calculators. Therefore, what are we supposed to do? Remember when we started here, we had a right angled triangle. So we are going to use the same, then substitute appropriately. So let us draw that right angled triangle. So we shall draw it here. 90. So place your theta maybe here or somewhere else. So we have theta there. Then we go back to the question. In the question, we are given that the cosine of theta is a quarter. So if we go back to what we had, sine is so opposite of hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent of hypotenuse, then tangent is opposite of adjacent. Therefore, taking the cosine, which is 1 over 4, it is adjacent of a hypotenuse. So this 1 represents the adjacent. So you can write here 1. 4 shall represent the hypotenuse. So we write here 4. Therefore, in that case, we have got two sides already solved. The hypotenuse is 4 and the adjacent is 1. So we are left with the opposite to this angle here. So by Pythagoras theorem, to get this side, we shall take 4 squared, subtract 1 squared, and you get root 15. So the opposite is root 15. Therefore, we can now go ahead and find the sine squared theta, the tangent of theta, the cosine of theta, and the sine theta. So let us start with the sine theta. So the sine of theta, using this section, is opposite of a hypotenuse. So we shall write here root 15 over 4. Then sine squared theta is now you square this section, this part here. So you write here root 15 over 4 squared, and we get 15 over 16. Therefore, the sine squared theta is 15 over 16. We have answered the first part. Second part, we have to get the tangent of theta. So tan theta, it is the opposite of adjacent. So root 15 divided by 1. So we end up with root 15. We have answered that question. Then lastly, you are given cos theta plus sine theta. So cos theta plus sine theta. The cosine of theta we had already been given is a quarter, so you write here a quarter. Sine theta, we had sine theta here, root 15 over 4. Now if you go back to book 3, we cannot get an exact root of 15, and therefore we call it a surd. Therefore, you can leave your answer in the surd form by simply moving on, find the LCM, which is 4, then we have 1 plus root 15. So we get our answer being equals to 1 plus root 15 over 4 as the answer to cos theta plus sine theta. In that case, you have not used a calculator anywhere. You haven't used a mathematical table. You are only substituting appropriately the parts that you have been given in that question. And as you have seen, I've only borrowed from Form 2 because this one is learned in Trigonometry 1. We take more examples. Simplify. Number 3, simplify. You're given cos squared theta plus cos squared into 90 minus theta. So we have to simplify this part here. Cos squared theta plus cos squared into brackets 90 minus theta. Now, as I had said, when you see some of these questions, when you see a square part, then you can think of this part here. Cos squared theta plus sin squared theta, you get 1. So when you come to this question here, if we are to use this section here, then it means that we are missing the sin squared theta. So we have to look at this critically and think of when do we get 90 minus theta. When do we get 90 minus theta? And how else can we write it? So when you go back to the ratios, sine and cosine, when you take a single angle and you look at its cosine and sine, you find that the two will always add up to a given number 1. Or if you take an angle and look at the complement of that same angle, it means that they are going to add up to 90. So if we take two angles like 30 and 60, these two angles add up to 90. Then we take the cosine and the sine. Let us consider 30 and 60. Take the sine of 30 is 0.5. How about the cosine of 60 degrees? Is also 0.5. Then how else can we write 30 degrees? We can write 30 degrees as 90 degrees minus 60 degrees. And this is the part that we have here. Such that now, if this part is cos, we can write it as the sine. Because the cosine of 60 is the same as the sine of 30. So, we can write this part. If this one is cosine, we can write it as a complement. Because when you take 90 minus 60, you get 30. So that 30, the sine of 30 is the same as cosine of 60. So this part, we shall now, instead of writing as 90 minus theta, we shall write it as sine squared theta in this part here. Sine squared theta. So we come to this part, we continue down here, and write cos squared theta plus sine squared theta. We are now simplifying. Sine squared theta. Then we go back to this part. When you have cos squared theta plus sine squared theta, then the answer you get should be 1. So this one equals to 1 using this section. Let us have another example.